Okay, young artists, so today we are going to look at some pop art. We're going to be drawing a donut or a cake if you want. There's a picture here, and this next clip shows you a few of the really simple steps that you can go through in order to make it look really realistic and have fun. So we're going to start with an oval, kind of like a squashed circle, for the outline shape of your donut. And you want to draw another oval coming down just below that so that you're starting to get that kind of three-dimensional shape. And I'm going to draw a wee curve there to show where the bite has been taken out with the donut, and then another smaller oval in the middle. So we're starting to get the outline shape of that, and I can start rubbing out the other lines. And when you're working with watercolours, you should always start with the lightest colour first. So you'll see me start that in just a wee minute. I'm going to draw a wee bit more of the donut here and some of the sprinkles and the shape of that pink sticky glaze that's over the top of it, because it's a really nice kind of soft organic edge. Okay. So you can either draw from the picture that I have in the slide, or you can ask your mum or dad to get you a donut and draw it in front of you and see if you can manage to take one bite out of it and draw it before you can finish the rest of it. That's a wee challenge for you. So here I'm starting with a really light colour for the base of the donut of the actual dough, that lovely kind of pale golden colour. And I'm using it really, really thinly, and I'm using a really small brush. It's a number 1 brush, so it's very thin and it's really easy to control the paint. And I'm using it really watered down because we want to build up the colour in layers, really nice and thinly. So we're not using lots of water, we're using small amounts, and we're really diluting that paint so that the colour's just like a thin wash of colour on it. And I'm going to start building that up just around the base of the donut to begin with. So I'm starting to use a slightly darker, warmer brown just to paint on the inside of the donut there where that bit's a bit darker, and we're seeing a bit of the surface area underneath in between that hole in the middle of the donut. And that, again, I'm still just using that really thinly and blending those colours, so just gradually starting to build up the colours and making them stronger and darker in each area as we go. I'm just using a really thin line of dark purple here just to mark the edge of the donut on the inside, because that is much darker if you look at the picture. And I'm just going over that again with a slightly wet brush just to soften those edges and make that line really nice and thin and delicate. Okay, so I'm just going to add a few more little sprinkles there that I can see just as the curve of the donut's going down into the centre there. And now I'm going to start adding a little bit of the pink gradually, but again starting much lighter, much paler than the donut actually is, because we're going to use the lighter areas to show the kind of the shiny parts, the highlights on the donut where the light is hitting it and reflecting off of that lovely sticky glaze on the top, because either side of that into the middle of the donut and at the edges it's going to be a bit darker. That's where the shadows are falling stronger. So just work really nice and delicately. The light pink wash of paint around your sprinkles, and I'm just going over all of the glazed part of the donut here. So at the edge now, I am going to start building up a slightly darker pink, and you can see how I'm using slightly curved, short curved lines with my brush. And again, that is really important to create that shape, because if you were to use straight lines, you're going to make the donut look flat, and it's really curved. So you want to use short curved lines at those edges to help create that shape and that form. So continue to use short curved lines at the edges all around the donut, from the centre ring in the middle of the donut, curving short curved lines, and around the edges as well, and just building up that colour. Remember, it's much darker at the edges, so starting to build up layers of colour with slightly darker shades of pink as you go. So I'm starting to use a little bit of the purple that I used earlier, and I'm using a really thin line just around the edge, and then using short curved lines to show the shape of that curve on the edge of the donut. I'm just taking that thin line of purple down to the edge of the glaze all around the donut. I'm going to do the same on the other side and on the inside again as well. This is going to help to create form, and you're getting a sense of light and dark because of this. So you're going to start to see the donut's going to look less flat and more three-dimensional as I build up those colours. And you can see that I'm gradually blending that dark purple into the pink, so that there's not a hard line on the donut between the colours. Where you want to blend that really nice and softly, and using your brush really curving it each time, short curved lines to blend those colours. So I'm still using a little bit of that purple and short curved lines again from the centre of the donut, curving around that edge, and I'm going to do the same on the right hand side as the donut curves around as well. So just continuing to build that up really nice and lightly. That's the key here. So always work from light to dark and always work really lightly in thin washes of colour. And if you make a mistake, you can always use a paper towel and dab that on the paper, and it will lift most of the paint off of that, and you can correct it. Okay. So in these lighter areas that curve around the middle of the donut, that is where the highlights are strongest, and I'm just going to use a wee bit of thinned out white watercolour paint just to go over those and make them curved white lines all the way around on those highlighted areas, and that's going to make them really stand out, especially after I add my next wash of darker colours to really enhance the shape, really show the shape of the donut. So either side of that lovely highlight, I'm going to start blending a little bit of a lighter pink than what I had used at the edges from the purple, so just so that we start to get a gradual transition, a gradual change of colour from the dark edge up to the highlight, and again that's going to help create that three-dimensional shape and form. Okay, so now we need to create more of a contrast between light and dark. So at the edges, we need to start making those much darker, but again, we want to do it gradually, and we're using thin washes of colour, and I'm using the dark purple here and blending that into that lighter pink that I've just added. And you can see I'm using short curved lines to do that, and that's really starting to make the donut look very curved and three-dimensional. And I'm doing the same thing with the glaze on the inside of the donut at the edge there, and you can see that's creating a really strong contrast now between the highlights in the middle and the darker areas of shadow and glaze at either side of that. So we're going to continue building up that darker colour, so I'm adding a bit more of the dark purple to the pink colour that I'd mixed up for the base of the donut when we first started, that really much lighter colour, and just gradually adding a little bit more purple to it, making that a wee bit darker, and using short curved lines and thin washes of colour to build up that tone and making those edges really nice and dark in contrast with those highlights. Taking a thin line of purple again around that edge, so you'll find as you're building up the layers of colour, the edge of the donut will lose its kind of sharpness, its definition, so you want to kind of tidy that up as you go. So I'm just doing that again right now, adding a wee bit of that really thin purple line around the edge, and again that creates a stronger contrast. You can see even just that thin line, what a difference that's made to the outside edge of the glazed area of the donut. So I'm going to use that on the inside of the donut as well. And I'm going to start making the hole where we can see the surface area of the table darker as well, because there's hardly any light reaching that part of the drawing or the image because of the shape of the donut. There's hardly any light getting in there, so we need to make that much darker. So I'm using some of the dark purple to go around the edge of the inside of the donut, and then I'm using a dark brown, and gradually I'm going to start making that much darker as we finish the other areas of the donut as well. So it's always kind of doing things gradually and working from light to dark and building up the darker tones, just one layer at a time, so that you know that you're not going too dark, and you're always looking to see how that affects the rest of the drawing or painting. So I can see that that needs to go a wee bit darker still, so I'm just gradually building up a bit more dark colours in there, so purples and dark browns, and blending them together to create that contrast. Okay, so now we're going to work on that golden unglazed part of the donut, that doughy base. And I'm going to start using some of that slightly golden colour again, and still working in really thin washes of colour, and gradually building that up. So short curved lines still, and we want to start building up the shapes and the colours of the textures, creating the textures in that area that's got the bite out of it. So when I was drawing it, I was drawing really nice soft kind of wavy lines to show the texture there, and you'll find that the watercolours dry really quickly, so leave that a few minutes to dry, and then I'm going to start using watered down slightly darker brown here to start to create the shadows on the outside edge of the unglazed part of the donut, and I'll use that to go over some of the lines on the inside part of it that's been bitten into to show the textures. So I'm just using a thin amount of dark brown here just to start to create the shadow underneath this part of the donut, and I'm going to use that to create some of those lines, wavy lines and textures in that wee area that's been had a bite taken out of it. So this area still isn't dark enough, so I'm going back in and I'm using again a slightly darker brown, and I'm going to start building up more dark colours and curved lines on the edge of the donut here. While that other area is drying, I'm going back into the middle of the donut, because again there isn't enough contrast there between light and dark. It's still looking a little bit flat, so I need to go in and make those shadows inside a bit darker still. So I'm going to use a dark blue and dark purple here to start to make that a bit darker, and then I'll go back to that outside edge, and again there's not enough contrast, so I'll continue building up more dark colours with the darker brown and using short curved lines to do that. And then I'm going to take my pencil and start to draw the shadow, which is being cast on the left hand side of the donut, because the light source is coming from the right hand side, so the shadow is really strong on the left hand side, and I'm going to start to paint that in with a really dark blue, and it's darkest at the edge of the donut, so a little bit on the inside where that bite mark is, but most of the shadow falls on the left hand side at the edge. And then I'm just going to take a wet brush and start to create a lighter area of shadow. So it's darkest at the edge and then it gradually gets lighter the further away it gets from the object. So now that I've added my shadow, I want to increase the shadow, the darker shadows and colours at the edges of the donut. So I'm going back in with a little bit more purple and short curved lines just to create those darker areas at the edges. Now you're ready to start adding the different colours for the sprinkles, and you are very nearly finished your first pop art inspired painting. So I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you take pictures of your finished artworks and post them on the Facebook page so everybody can see them. Well done, guys.